Howdy, my friends. I've had a lot of stuff going on lately, and I just want to get on here and talk to y'all. I'm Teresa Shields Parker, if you don't know who I am, and I have been bitten by the fiction bug. Doesn't hurt, feels pretty good actually. You know me probably as a nonfiction writer, and these days, though, God has pushed me into this fiction area and I love it. So I'm going to attempt to share with you kind of what I've been up to while I've been pretty much at home nursing a knee, that I got replaced back in 2010, and now it needs to be replaced again, and that's going to happen probably in the first part of 2014. But it's easy to guess if you've been following me on Facebook or Instagram for any amount of time that I've been writing fiction. And believe it or not, I've written a new book. And like I said, this time it's fiction, not nonfiction like the 10 other books I've written. The name of this new book is Rebuilding Jane, and this is it. And yeah, it's a pretty thick book, but it's a fun book. It's a fun book to write, and I think it's a fun book to read too. There are things in there that are deep, things that will help you in your walk with the Lord, in your health journey, and all of those kinds of things. Your inner healing journey, definitely a lot of things in here about inner healing, and I get to apply them to the fictional characters, and that's kind of fun. So, God also told me that this is fiction that transforms, which was very helpful to me because I don't feel like I need to be writing any book unless it helps people in some way, unless it starts them on a transformation journey. So this book, Rebuilding Jane, this one right here. I have put it right here. Can't hardly see it. Okay. Anyway, that's book one in a series of at least 3, maybe 4, maybe more. I don't know. This book deals with her father's protection. Next book will deal with her sister's support. And the third book will deal with her mother's comfort. And then the last book, I'm not sure yet. I kind of have an idea, but I'm not going to share it yet. That's what the author gets to do, right? You get to keep a little bit back for yourself until it's time to let it go. So I'm stoked about this book, mainly because I've been living with this story, friends, for 10 years. Yeah, almost. It's going to be 11 years when January comes. So, I'm a journalist by trade, and I love to write nonfiction. But I put this book off until this year when God said to me, it's now or never. The best way I can describe this whole series is that it is the fictional version of my best-selling book, which is my memoir entitled Sweet Grace, How I Lost 250 Pounds. I'm definitely not the fiction character in this book, except that God told me, Jane is you. But when I realized who Jane is and her issues, it's really more of her issues that apply to all of us, that makes us feel like we're living in this book. So, when I wrote Sweet Grace, that was in 2013. It was in 2014 that I was at a writer's conference and God gave me this story. I was sitting during a quiet time, just reading my Bible, and all of a sudden God said, I want you to write this book. And he laid it out for me. He gave me the kind of the whole storyline of it. Not everything, but enough to where I knew what was happening. And I'm like, but God, I don't know how to write fiction. Never written fiction. So you're going to have to show me how to do this. And so I just kind of sat on that for a while and started writing what I knew to write, which is nonfiction. And I've written 10 nonfiction books. So in addition to Sweet Grace, they include Sweet Change, Sweet Freedom, Sweet Hunger, Sweet Journey to Transformation, Sweet Surrender, Sweet Excuses, probably one of my favorite books, but one of the least read, Sweet Victory, and then the Sweet Freedom Study Guide and the Sweet Grace Study Guide. This particular book has a whole lot of inner healing in it. And Sweet Freedom Study Guide also has the how-to part of doing inner healing. So that's in there as well. And when I do my book launch party, which will be on the 14th of December, I'm going to give to everybody there that purchases, this, I'm going to give them a copy of Sweet Freedom Study Guide because it has that inner healing part in it. My college degrees are in journalism and Bible. And for years, I edited and published true stories for news bureaus, magazines, public relations departments, newspapers, weekly newspapers mainly. Writing truth is definitely in my blood. So when God gave me the fiction story, I was like, I don't know about this, God. I'm not real eager to jump into this. But I did attempt to start writing it, but I quickly learned that fiction is more difficult than truth. Truth is really cut and dry. You're on the right track if you're telling the truth, especially if you're trying to convey something like biblical truth. Fiction, not so specific. It can be a true fiction story in that it happened, but it's not truth that really you apply things to learn from. However, God says this can be fiction that transforms. So story can transform us. And if you think about it, some of the best sermons I've heard have been ones that take biblical truth and they weave in a true story with it to make you really understand how that fits into real life. So I did try in the early part of 2014 to begin writing Rebuilding Jane. When God gave me this story, he gave me the way to spell Jane, which is, I don't know if you can even read it because that's kind of a funky font. Jayne. I'm not sure why, except that Jane is a very normal name. But when you put the Y in it, it makes it unique. And Jane is definitely unique, like all of us are. So, I tried, like I said, in 2014 to begin writing it. And the first chapter, pretty much the same first chapter that's in this book, was written in 2014, the basic information. I did add some things to it. And then I was at a writers' conference, I don't know, maybe 6 to 9 months after that. And I was having a conversation with an editor, and I showed her that first chapter. And she said, why aren't you writing fiction? You need to be writing fiction. And I think that just kind of scared me because wasn't sure I wanted to write fiction. But several times during those 10 years when I was writing a nonfiction book, in between those, I felt like God was saying, remember rebuilding Jane? And then I would go back to it and I'd write a little more on it, but then I'd get stuck again. And so, it was like writing bits and pieces, but it never came together until the summer of this year. And probably part of it is because I've written a whole lot about the how-to of weight loss, especially as it pertains to Christians, right? I'm not sure I've got a lot more to write, and maybe one of these days I will. But, really, I felt like God said to me, remember rebuilding Jane. It's now or never. And I thought, well, he's been after me for 10 years about this book, so I better start. So I always try to have a deadline for when I will at least have the first draft of a book done. Many times it's something memorable, like August 5th, that's my birthday. April 9th, that's my wedding anniversary. January 1, just because, first of the year, and something I can remember. This year, I wanted my first fiction book's first draft deadline to be done by August 5th. And I know that's kind of crazy, but that was also the first draft deadline of my first nonfiction book, Sweet Grace. So Rebuilding Jane is, like I said, really the fictional version of Sweet Grace. So, all of these other books, I tell people how to lose weight. I give details about that. But now what I'm discovering about this series, the Jane series, is that it is taking the things that I've shared in my other books, all of my other nonfiction books, and in my own life, and applying it to fictional characters, which is kind of fun. I've attempted to make it true to real life, and real life can go in a million different directions, right? But really writing this book has changed my walk with God, and I felt like he was leading me as I wrote every single chapter. Because sometimes I knew that character X needed to do this thing to go here, but I wasn't sure how to get them there, him or her, to the place they needed to be. And then there was one time when I was writing what I felt like was a really integral chapter for the book. It was like a key piece, like everything hinged on that. And I wrote that chapter. I wasn't real happy with it. And then I went to bed. But I woke up the next morning and God clearly spoke to me and said, throw out that last chapter and start over. I will show you what to write. And he did. I mean, friends, from the minute I put my hands on the computer keys to the end of that chapter, not one word of it had been in my head. It was like I'm the scribe and God is the author and dictating the words to me. And that is so much fun. So much fun. A lot more fun than nonfiction writing. So that chapter set the tone for that entire book. And he gave me places and people and the depths of the storyline. The depth of the storyline is really key, I'm finding out. Because we don't want it to just be surface level. This is a Christian fiction book. So we want it to go deep and to penetrate deep into souls, right? Because God is amazing. He is very creative. And of course, we know that just by looking at the differences in all of us and all of those people and the animals and the places, the lands, the beauty of the world. But many times I realized writing a book is no problem for God, because every single one of us is a book he is writing, and he's weaving us together with all of the other books he's writing and all of the other people. And then that made me think of all the various people it takes to interact with one person God is trying to direct or trying to reach. So this book will be a series about Jane, because there is so much to Jane's story. A lot Jane needs to learn, right? So my editing partner suggested that we keep a list of all of the characters, their names, where they work, what they look like, and all that kind of stuff. Everything we've said about that character. And that alone has been so helpful to me, because, see, I'm not God, and I cannot remember everything, especially not people that I have seen in person, although they're getting very real to me. And then, of course, that got me to thinking about how God designed us individually and to interact together. There's so many times that the things that we do in our lives, like a hobby or a job or even going to church, all can come about because of someone we met somewhere. I remember years ago, I was publishing and editing a Christian newspaper. We had a writer's workshop, and a guy came towards the end of the workshop. I happened to be sitting in the back for that very reason, to welcome people who came in late. So I met him, and he was a wonderful writer. He began writing for our Good News Journal, was the name of the paper. And we were desperate for really good writers who would write for free because we weren't making any money, and we were just barely paying for the printing and the insertion, because we were inserting it into local weekly newspapers. Later, I met his wife, and she became a good friend of mine, still is one of my best friends. And she had been working for an organization that helped mentally challenged adults. But the director called her in and told her that he had an idea to start a new program to place children and maybe teens in homes with families who already had kids in the home. Functional families. He wanted to take dysfunctional kids and put them in functional families and see how that would work, if they would get better. And so he asked her, he wanted he had several criteria. One was that at least one adult in the family, one of the mom or the dad, needed to be have a college degree. And of course, the families needed to be functional. And he suggested that it would be good if they had a church home, that would be something that would be good to interact or invite the kids to. So he asked her to bring families who might fit all that criteria and be interested in doing it. So she invited us. Now, can I just confess something right here? I was interested because of the helping people, of course, but also because it paid really well. And it was something I could do. I could stay home because they would be at school during the day. I could stay home and write. And so that really was something that appealed to me. You know, we invited others to this meeting, and pretty soon we were part of a group of families who were taking care of these various individuals. It wasn't easy, but I did love doing it because I could stay home and write during the day, like I said. And eventually I was able to hire staff to assist my husband and I so we could do things with our kids as well. So it was difficult. Yeah, it was. But was it worth it? Yes, of course. We introduced them, like I said, to church and to basic rules because a lot of these kids had not had rules and had not even known what it was like to be in a functional family. But to get a hug from one of them or see a smile on their face was really worth it. During that time, we were also able to pay off many debts that we had. So that's another blessing that came as a result of just meeting one person. And God just brought them across my path. I didn't go out and look for that person. They just came into my life. I heard someone say that every good thing that happens to us, we can trace back to one person who was instrumental with that. Instrumental by showing us something or telling us something or inviting us somewhere or even helping us with a hobby that we got involved in or something. You know, writing fiction is a bit like that. The author gets to pick who is going to be instrumental in someone else's life. Kind of fun. Just like the author of the universe has done for us. Now, God literally tells me what to write, and I write it. Otherwise, I don't think I could write fiction because it's very creative. And I'm learning to be creative, but I really need God's creativity to help me. So I'm going to share a few of my favorite quotes from Rebuilding Jane and a bit of the context. So in the first chapter, which is now free on my website, and I'll have that down at the bottom of this podcast or on Facebook or someplace, I'll have that. Anyway, in this chapter, Jane is not well, and this is the quote: "I totally understand, having once weighed 430 pounds. Eyes closed, she sucked in air as if it were German chocolate cake. She tried to force some of it into her lungs, but instead it felt like a knife cutting through her." Now, Jane's dad has some issues in the first part of this book, Rebuilding Jane. And Jane says, "Fear tried to take hold of me right then. I felt it creeping in, a presence poised to destroy me." Fear is something we all face, and many times we don't realize the source is evil, plain and simple. You know, Jane is going through some major difficulties in this book, and we can all identify with a lot of them. When she is trying to figure out why she keeps eating, she says, "Ice cream, cookies, and maybe even diet soda help me forget the sad, difficult, and miserable days that feel like they are closing in on me." Ever been there? I have. Now, forgiveness is something we many times put off or refuse to even try to engage in. Sophia, Jane's mother, has this to say: "Early hurts can define our lives until we have the courage to face them head on and tell God we forgive the person who wronged us." Many of us carry those early hurts with us, and they guide our lives, and we don't even realize it. A doctor tells Jane this important tidbit we should all tuck away for use in our own lives. You can't control much in this world, but you and you alone can control what you eat, and therefore you can control your health. Now, all the things we do that we think we can't stop are basically either bad or good habits. An American historian and philosopher said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." I love that quote. I guess the reverse could be said as well. Stupidity is not an act, but a habit. However, we can overcome a stupid or a bad habit by starting a good one in its place. And that is one of the ways I teach weight loss and giving up things like sugar and flour. And then again, the doctor tells Jane, you can't lose weight on your own. You've tried and failed. You have to recognize there's a power greater than yourself who can restore you to sanity. Surrendering your addiction to God, whether it's sugar, alcohol, drugs, whatever, is the first step in lifelong change. I do want to talk a little bit about how important reviews are on Amazon for authors. Reviews are the way that people find books to read. And so I really encourage people to get the book, read the book, write a review. So, all of my reviews are great, but I'm going to read this last one because I love it the most. And she says, it's from Happy Puzzler. She says, I have read all of Teresa's other books. Each of her books has inspired and helped me greatly in my own journey towards weight loss and a healthier lifestyle. Being her first fiction novel, I was especially excited to read Rebuilding Jane. I ordered it in paperback, but was eager to start reading it, so I also bought it for my Kindle, so I could get a jump start reading it while waiting for my paperback copy to be delivered. Once I started reading it on Kindle, I couldn't put it down. I have one chapter left. The paperback copy arrived this afternoon. It is an incredible, gripping, deeply moving story. I can see so much of myself in the character of Jane. I can imagine that Jane's struggles with food addiction and weight will likely resonate with many others as they did with me. Jane's thoughts and feelings are just like so many of my own and many other people I know who battle weight and food issues of any kind. Another slam dunk hit by Teresa Shields Parker. I cannot wait for the sequel to Rebuilding Jane. Somewhere on there, I think she did this. She wrote this in a group we're in, that she said, move over Karen Kingsbury. Teresa Shields Parker is now my new favorite Christian fiction writer. I don't know about that. Karen's pretty good. But anyway, so this book, please get it. Please read it. There'll be more books like this, and they will build on each other. So right now, Rebuilding Jane is out in paperback and Kindle, and it will be in Audible, I'm sure, when you, by the time you hear this podcast, if it isn't already. And it will be out in paperback. That may be a little bit later. I'm really excited for you to read it. If I could give it to you free just because I want you to read it, I would. But please do read it. Leave a review on Amazon for others to discover it. I really did write this book for you because I really do believe it is a book that will help you. I know it will. It's not just about weight loss. I want that to be front and center. It has some weight loss aspects in it, but it's also about all of the difficulties that we're trying to face on our own in life. So for all of those things, Please get it. Please read it. Go to Amazon. Google Rebuilding Jane, Jayne, and you can find it there. And also on my Facebook page, Teresa Shields Parker, on my website, teresashieldparker.com. You can find it everywhere. Thank you guys. Love you. Sweet grace for your journey.